What's up, Salt Strong Nation? Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again here at Hurricane Central. Yes, recording this right here as old Ian is coming through Florida. And this, if you missed the last episode, this episode along with the prior one are two from the archives from way back, many years ago. And what I realized is so many new audience members and a lot of people have never heard some of the older podcasts. And this one, just like the prior one, was one that had some of the most downloads of all time throughout our entire Salt Strong podcast history. And this is all about gator trout with Speckled Truth. The guy, Chris Bush, knows his stuff. He has studied gator trout and what lures have worked best during certain moon phases. I mean, certainly some really cool science-based stuff. So hope you enjoy this episode. Hope you made it through the hurricane safely. By the time you listen to this, I pray the hurricane has already passed by your house. And next episode, it'll be back to the normal scheduled stuff. Hope you enjoy it. Much love. Tight lines.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong, Fish Strong Nation. Joe Simons back. Another episode. This is going to be an awesome one. We've had multiple people ask about this dude and this brand. And I know from looking at our past stats, conservation does well and anything with big old trout does well. And we get to combine both of them today. So I got Chris Bush, the Speckled Truth. You might have seen him there on Instagram. Sir. The Dirty 30. I'm talking about some trophy trout, dude. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm pumped to have you on. I'm hoping we're going to talk about your story because everyone loves the story, including me. And I found out that you're in the military, and some pretty cool background. And but at the end, I do want to talk about some like tactics and what you found in terms of lures or bait or types of areas and seasons to catch these big old gator trout, dude. I love your Instagram page, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Joe. Yeah, we're trying, man. We're just trying to grow the brand, and obviously we have a tremendous passion for big trout, you know, and we love sharing that passion. That's the biggest thing. Yeah,
and you guys are obviously pretty consistent at it. Like every day there's a new 30+ inch trout going up. It's like, man, where's he finding all these people? And you're catching a bunch of. I was like, man, what's going on? So what's your background like? Did you grow up fishing? I know you're in Texas now, but grew up in Louisiana. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So yes, sir. Originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and so grew up fishing there in the Louisiana Delta. Really claim our home waters off of LA 23 in little tiny Port Sulphur. We had a camp on Happy Jack Canal, or also known as Martin's Lane. But yeah, really kind of grew up there. I had a boat, a little 16-foot flat boat. Honestly, we called it the Mullet Smasher, that I bought from a guy in Grand Isle. That was my first boat that I owned, and didn't even have a driver's license. So we just kept it at the camp. And then my dad would pretty much just turn me loose. Hey, go get lost in the marsh. Obviously, I would have to have a phone or some sort of device, you know, and at the time it was one of those Nextel, which is pretty funny thinking back to that. But yeah, growing up in the Louisiana Delta. And so joined the military, obviously had a tremendous passion for speckled trout fishing because my dad is a really notable trout fishing angler in the New Orleans area. And so he's actually the 3-time trout tagger in the state of Louisiana with almost 12,000 trout tagged over 4 years.
So what's your dad's name?
My dad's name's Charlie Bush. Okay. He's actually a retired auto mechanic. And when he decided to retire now, gosh, only 15, 17 years ago, something like that. But obviously we would always go fishing. We spent just a tremendous amount of time. And so when he finally retired, he decided, you know, to kind of give back to the estuary and started with the Tag Louisiana program. And really trying to give back and gain a better understanding. But growing up underneath his tutelage, pretty much if it was a redfish coming over the gunnels, it was going back, or it was a trash fish, obviously drum or sheep's head. We were not trophy trout, but we were trout anglers from the get. And so I've just adopted that mentality. And so 9/11 happened, and I was getting my commission, and I decided to get my commission through LSU. And then joining the Air Force now 14 years ago, it's hard to believe it's been that long, but the Air Force has been pretty good to me thus far in terms of moving me to places where I can actually pursue both things, like so trout fish as well as obviously continue my military career. So it's been pretty fortunate to do both of those things.
That's great. Get to serve the country, keep us safe, and catch a bunch of trout. So, dude, go back to what you just said. So, did you say 12,000 trout in 4 years?
In 4 years, yes, sir. So he started really going full tilt in the Tag Louisiana program. Don't make me lie, Joe, but it was like, I think it was 2000. It was the year deployed. So it was 2015.
Okay. And
he did that from 2015 to 2018. And so the first year, I think he tagged, and this is just tagged, it was like close to 1,200 fish. And then the following years, that's when he really started to kind of find his groove in terms of his process and tagging and releasing and documenting all those things. And so, yeah, it was multiple years where he'd had over, like 3,000 tag years, and so he's
nuts.
A pretty dedicated guy. I think, my pops is 74 now. So it's cool to see a guy like that. And that's really inspiring for me, to be brutally honest, man, is like seeing a guy who grew up in a totally different mentality, especially in Louisiana, in terms of keeping and catching. And now you're seeing, an older gentleman like tagging fish and giving back to a resource. And how can you, you see an older guy just kind of hobbling, pushing his boat in and out of the garage and then going out there and catching fish and then having the time afterwards to go ahead and document all that stuff in the tagging program online and stuff like that. It just shows his dedication to our fishery and the legacy, I think, that he wants to leave for what he says is his grandson. So I have 3 children. I have 3 boys. And so he wants to leave a lasting impression so they can enjoy it just as much as I did when I was a little boy.
And I love it. So I was doing the math, and that's like eight trout per day on average.
So here's the crazy part, though, if you really want to kind of dive into it. So he didn't fish, obviously, 365 days.
Exactly.
He's
that's
a retired
my point.
guy, so he cherry picks his days. And I think the most he ever went in 1 year was 101 or 102 days. But if you broke it down, he was averaging 43 trout per trip.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's a beast. And this is all on artificial. So this isn't live bait or anything like that. This is a pure plastic fisherman. And so that's what I do. And again, growing underneath that kind of tutelage, I'm an artificial only guy. The last time I threw a live shrimp, I wrote a blog about it. It was in Black Bay out of Delacroix, Louisiana back in like 1995. I'll never forget it because we went out to Black Bay. Actually, it was Iron Banks. There's a little place out there called Iron Banks. And we had 100 live shrimp geared up, and obviously we fished around and caught a bunch of hardheads. And then so finally we were just trying to find some fish. And so we picked up an old H&H purple and white Kakaho minnow, a little 3-inch Kakaho minnow.
Yeah. And
all of a sudden, kind of 1 trout led to 2 trout led to 10 trout led to 30, and before long we had a limit. And so that was the last time we ever threw any sort of live bait. And so it's just a decision that we made, and it's kind of made it fun for us. And we always kind of say, if you can't, if they won't eat plastic, they're not worth catching. It's not to be a snooty thing. It's just, we love the chase. We love the hunt. We love to try to fool it. It's part of the game, and that's what really drives us when we go fishing,
And it's, I use the word freedom and in control because, like I have a paddleboard. I don't want to be obviously, I don't want to be throwing a net or carrying my net or having a transporter, have to worry about keeping the bait or shrimp alive. And it's just, and you can do it on your lunch break. I mean, there's been days where I'm just like right now you're in your lunch break. I don't know how close you are to the coast, but I mean, if you're close, man, I can go out there and just from the shore, catch a trout real quick without having to worry about going to get live baits. I love that, man. That's crazy. Yeah. I got to get you and your dad on next time. Have a father-son.
Yeah. That'd be awesome, man. I love my pops, man. He's amazing, man. And honestly, whatever we try to do, we obviously try to do together. And so we share one of those one of those really simple things, man. It was late January 31st is the day after my birthday. And so, he was like, man, I really want to get, one of those big fish. So I live in San Antonio now, as you mentioned. And so I fished the Texas coast, and he was like, hey, look at the weather. Let me know. I'd love to come make a birthday trip with you, this, that, and the other thing. And so we're kind of eyeing the weather for a Thursday, Friday over the weekend type deal. And so turns out it actually started to kind of shape up pretty well. Long story short, he met me down on the Texas coast, right there in the Upper Laguna Madre near Corpus. And we fished for 3 days. And that Friday afternoon, I wrote a blog about it. I just actually posted not too long ago. It's called Yellow Ascent. And it was my dad's trophy trout, the biggest he's ever caught, which is 28 and a quarter. And I get emotional kind of talking about it because my dad means so much to me. And so when he caught that fish, he caught on a Rapala shadow wrap. And when that fish came up, man, I'll never forget it. And this is why we love the game and love trophy trout. When he hooks that fish, again, this is a guy who's tagged 12,000 trout in 4 years. When he hooks this fish and this fish comes up and shakes, he loses it, right? I mean, he's like, oh my God. Like he literally, you could hear the quiver in his voice. He's looking to his left. I'm standing there. I got my rod ready to kind of help him out. And, man, he says, I'm sorry, I get emotional, but he says, man, my heart's shaking or my heart's racing. My heart's racing. And I put my arm on him and, I'm just like, hey dude, I'm like, just keep your rod tip up, keep your line tight. We're going to land this fish. And so, just think back to the years he did that for me. And yeah, so.
Dude, I love it, man. You're getting me emotional, dude. I think that's,
no, man.
Man, that's that. And dude, what you just said, nailed it, brother. Like that's what fishing is all about. Regardless if you land the thing or not, yep. It's those memories. And now you're almost kind of the coach of the guy. I mean, you had essentially a Hall of Famer, fisherman as a dad, and all of a sudden now the tables have turned. Dude, that's awesome. So how'd the rest of the trip go and everything? And then
yeah, so I mean, the trip was made that afternoon. We landed the fish. We took some great photos and hugged, man, afterwards, and he was excited. Guys just kind of fired up, catching that big fish. And so I'm glad I could give him that memory. But then it was kind of sad because 2 days later we fished hard, man. We fished really, really hard. And we ended up catching a handful, I'd say maybe less than a dozen really, really good quality fish. I'm talking in the 5 to 8 pound range. And so we, on the third day, we only had about 2-3 hours before he had to hit the road to go back to New Orleans. And he was throwing a Texas Custom Lure, Mirror Lure Double D, fishing pretty skinny, about knee deep, real foggy. And, boom, had the big thump, sets the hook. I got one. And, I'm kind of looking over again, kind of to my left, and we're kind of fishing the flat. So we're waiting together. I'm like, you got one? He's like, yep. So you see his rod tip up, and all of a sudden you see this huge head shake. And, I'm like, oh, we both kind of did the same thing at the same time. And again, I kind of got my rig, set up ready to go ahead and help him land the fish again. And sure enough, man, one more head shake. And I don't know how 6 hooks just start flinging out right back at you. Like, I don't even know how it happens, but yeah, it wasn't meant to be, but that was a really special fish too, just 2 days later. But hey, man, all you can do is tip the cap. And, he said, I'll be back. I said, I hope so.
Yeah, I love it. Man.
Anyway, yeah, dude, that's what we live for. That's what we live for right there.
My friend who's not even much of a fisherman, I was explaining what we do, and he got it because I kept talking about the stories and the testimonials that come in from our insider, our super community. And he's like, dude, you're creating memories that matter. And he'd only fished a couple of times with his dad before he passed away, and that was like, man, those were the memories that matter. And I was like, that's it, nailed it. Man, it's so cool, dude. So
yeah,
so
sorry to get emotional, man. Everyone, it means a lot to me.
No, there's no apologies, man. That's what this is all about, dude. Like I said, I was tearing up. I was getting goosebumps putting myself in your shoes and my own memories with my dad. So I'm sure all the listeners probably had the same feelings. So that's awesome. So you once again, you have this, I'm going to call him a Hall of Famer, dad. you now joined the military. When did when was Speckled Truth born, and when did it turn into essentially a brand? I know you said it's now like a real company, it's an LLC, but when was this idea all right, this is something I want to start?
So when we moved from Keesler, which is in Biloxi, to Texas, so I would fish 4 to 5 nights a week when I lived in Biloxi, like you're talking about, because we lived I live right there on Keesler. And so the Mississippi Front Beach and Highway 90 were really a stone's throw away. And so I fished a lot there, and I fished a lot there at night. I would wade fish, walk in, wade, and do a lot of stuff. And so I really started shifting my mindset. I caught a really good fish. I was in October or something like that, my first year there. And then I kind of looked and started doing a little bit more research, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to pattern these fish. And so I did. And it was very, very specific. And when I started kind of dialing them in even more and more. And so to answer your question, when we moved from Biloxi to Texas, that's when I was like, man, I need to start kind of documenting this pursuit. And since I can't go fishing as much as I used to, I'm now going to write Speckled Truth. And so I was literally in the shower, and I came out the shower and I'm getting dressed, and my wife's downstairs, and she's like, what's on your mind? I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about writing a blog. And she's like, you serious? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, what's it about? And I'm like, trophy trout fishing. And she's like, what are you going to name it? And I'm like, Speckled Truth. And she's like, I like that. and so it was just kind of born. And so I started documenting a lot of stuff, outside of the box techniques that I would use, dialing into really the small windows and the specific things that I would see, to even the experiences. I wrote one, Like It Was Yesterday, a blog called Like It Was Yesterday. And that was a pretty cool one, because that was at the time one of my biggest fish that I'd missed, man. I had them in my hand, and I dropped them for her. And just always on that pursuit. But I left Mississippi, finally catching one over 28, which was awesome, 8.2, and then multiple over 27, and then gosh, quite a few over the 6 and change area. So it was pretty awesome, man. But when I moved to Texas, though, then I started to realize that there's a lot of nuances here that are very relatable and also very unique to Texas. And so I moved from Mississippi to Texas the first time, which was from 13 to 16. And then that's when I really met my writing mentor, Captain Mike McBride, down on the lower Laguna Madre in Port Mansfield. And so he used to write for Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine, and he's a great, if I could recommend any sort of outdoor writer or any fishing writer or author, he would be the one, just because of his writing style. But he's just an incredibly knowledgeable person. And so I still hang out with him. I just go down there and talk to him and Captain Trisha and sit there and drink coffee and sit in the porch and watch people go in and out of port, but I'm always just trying to learn. And so the nuances that I started to learn in Texas and adapting those and doing that. And then now I moved to Florida from 16 to 18. I started to apply those, and I saw some success. And then now I'm back to Texas, and now I'm just kind of trying to pick back up where I left off in 16. And so all a Speckled Truth is really documenting this process, but understanding the nuances and the experiences and yeah, all that stuff, man. So yeah, it started in 2000, to answer your question, it started in 2013, and we've kind of moved on from there.
Cool. And so you've hit a lot of different fisheries too, it sounds like. What's the biggest now? What's your personal best?
Yeah, personal best is a 30.5, 17.25-inch girth, 11 pounds on the BOGO.
Man.
Yep. And this is the only regret I have with that fish is obviously we promote conservation, right? That's what we do, is taking what you need and releasing the rest. And I tried forever. Honestly, I was ill prepared because I never thought I'd catch a fish that big. And so I was ill prepared, and I was out there and I set the hook. I caught her on a Mirrolure she-dog. And so when she came up and shook, I was just freaking out. And so I finally got her, I finally landed her. And I remember looking at the fish on my boga, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a giant. And so I didn't have a phone. I didn't have anything. And I'm in a walk-in spot. And so I like hoofing it to my truck. I kept the fish in the water on a boga. I was like, just don't swim away. I just kind of kept her there, but I was within kind of running distance. So I did, and I went and got that. And I kind of knocked on a window and asked this guy to take a picture. And so he did as well. But the short of it is I tried to really revive this fish and she wouldn't. And so I decided to harvest her, obviously, and she wouldn't go, and I harvested her, and so I took her home. I was going to get a replica mount made by New Wave Taxidermy, and so when I brought her home and filleted her up, and this is going to kill people that are listening, I'm sorry, but no, man, she had a 15-inch trout in her belly.
Whoa.
It was really remarkable. Yeah, it was really remarkable, and so it was just really an insane fish, and I thank her for that memory. I just wish I could have let her go, you know.
And that's, let's talk about that, because with all of your posts, I see you're always referencing catch and release, conservation, hashtag those. So that's obviously really important to you now, right? And not to say that it wasn't them, but it seems like that's to me, when I think of Speckled Truth, you guys are all about catching trophy trout and releasing them.
In conservation. That's who we are. We're a brand for trophy speckled trout and conservation. And so our simple message is take what you need, release the rest. We obviously hashtag let them go, let them grow, that type of stuff. But we are we try to promote as much conservation as possible, right? And we want to save and capture the genetics from those big breeders. Not only that, but we really just try to promote the mindset of taking what you need, literally, and releasing the rest. So again, growing up in Louisiana, the limit's 25, 12-inch per trout per person per day. And so do I really need 25, 12-inch trout per person per day if I fish more than 3 days a week? Probably not. And so just be responsible, and that way we can take or safeguard and make sure we're taking care of a resource for many years to come. That's what we try to promote, not necessarily just pro catch and release, everything catch and release. Look, if you decide to harvest fish, that's great. Just do it responsibly. That's all we try to really get at.
Yep. Yeah, it's really tough in general because you and I talked offline one time about this, and we all kind of grew up, there were limits. And I mean, part of going fishing, at least, back in the 80s and 90s and stuff was, hey, let's see if we can hit the limit. It was almost, and because we didn't have pictures, we didn't have camera phones. It was almost more of a pride thing, even if you didn't need it. I mean, we had a whole second freezer. I'm embarrassed to say, but it's the truth. We literally had a whole second freezer in our garage, and every year, I remember just throwing away stuff because it was gone bad. It was just all this excess stuff we didn't need. And obviously a lot has changed since then in terms of our mindset. And I talked to some of the guides there in Louisiana. We were there last year, and, a lot of them complained that things weren't the same. And, after talking to them, having a couple beers, there are some pretty crazy limits in Louisiana. And I'm asking well, hey, are you letting your customers keep it all? Well, yeah, of course. They're and not to say they're the problem. Man, if we don't, then their customers aren't going to use us. They're just going to go to the next guy that will let them keep all this stuff. And so I don't know what the answer is, but it seems like everyone's kind of struggling with it. And I'm proud of you guys that you guys are at least just trying to make a movement to get people to to once again just keep what you need and nothing else. Release everything else.
The rest. Yeah. And so yes, going back to your point that you just made, it sells trips. Got it. Wheelbarrows full of trout sell trips. And I'm not saying they don't, but I'm also looking at the alternative measure here in Texas, and I cannot be more of an advocate for these two charter captains down in the Lower Laguna Madre, excuse me, and that's Captain Ernest Cisneros and Captain Wayne Davis. And what they do is called an empty stringer catch and release program. And so they guide 190 days, 200 days a year. They're full-time guys. And what they offer their clients is the chance to, if they decide to, if they want to do a harvest trip, they do a harvest trip. But if they want to do an empty stringers trip, what they do is they take them out. They obviously go and catch fish. They release all those fish. And then what they then do is they enter those people into a drawing where they'll do it actually at the Holder Fishing Show, which is now this week down in Texas in Houston. and they'll draw a couple of different people that decide to do and take part in their program. And they give away like Sims waiters, AFCO stuff. They give away like free trips for their guides that enter, or for their clients that have entered into this program. So it's a chance for not only for, their guests to maybe book them again or get some stuff for their decision, but they're also showing that they can make and create a sustainable income as full-time charter captains by not having a harvest mindset, like harvest only mindset. They're giving their clients an option to do one or the other. And so, man, if we can get that going just in the guide fleet, I think that'd be tremendous. But I get it. Again, a lot of production and a lot of fish on a dock and fish in Ziplocs. They sell trips, but it's not the only, or at least I hope not the only thing that we have going forward. And so I'd like to support, Wayne and Ernest as much as we can.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that. It's called, you said Empty Stringer Catch and Release?
Empty Stringers Catch and Release Program.
Cool.
Yes, sir.
I love that. I've never heard of that. So let's talk about the rest of the show. Big trout. You got your Dirty 30. Obviously, that means going after a 30-incher or more. What is that? Is that something internal that you guys have, and you're getting people sending you pictures of them? Like, tell me how that kind of got started.
Sure. So the idea behind that was when the hot ditch was going on up in the East Coast, right? I was looking at all the citations they had in their program. And so when I was looking at that, I was astounded by how many 30-inch trout were coming either out of the hot ditch or the Elizabeth River and in kind of the Northeast area, North Carolina, Virginia areas. And so I then started to think, well, I've seen a whole heck of a lot too in Texas. So I wonder how many 30-inch trout are actually caught in a year. And so I just kind of posed that question. And so to have like some sort of incentive for people to send it and kind of make it exclusive per se, I basically I worked with this guy, Ethan Manning, and created a little Dirty 30 sticker. And so the only way to get it's to earn it, right? So the only way to get it's to submit your fish on a measuring device with pictures, and then you got to provide some other data, and that is obviously your name, the date caught, where it was caught doesn't have to be specific, what the actual official length was, and we verify that on the actual pictures, and then whether or not the fish was released and what it was caught on. And so we started handing out stickers. Well, last year was our inaugural year, and we had 59 entries into the program. And I wish I had that data. I actually have 2000 or this year's current with me right now. But last year of those 59, what we then started to do is really kind of look at maybe some of those analytics. And, well, okay, we always hear these theories of anglers saying, well, all these big fish feed in really small windows and they're on the full and the new moon. Okay, well, that's a theory, and let's look at the data. And so we found that was truly the case. And so we saw more fish caught and registered on new and full moons. And so we validated a theory. And so we're starting to use kind of some of that data to validate some of the theories that we as anglers have. And so this year we've opened the aperture more because we realized that, hey, a 30-inch trout is a really special fish. And so this year we opened it up and had a trophy trout citation program accompany the Dirty 30 program. But the trophy trout citation program is in each state, and that's for fish 27 or greater. And so a 27-inch trout that's caught in Mississippi is like a 30 in Texas, right? And so there's still some data analytics that we could probably get from that. There's still some understanding that we can get from the subset of not species, but like the subset of trout, right? We always hear that they're different. And so opening that aperture has been really good. And so we just want to grow the data pool. Well, to do that, we created a unique state sticker for each of the states. And if you submit a 27-inch or greater trout, then we give you that sticker. But if you submit the Dirty 30 trout for this year, we give you the new Dirty 30 sticker, a trophy trout citation sticker for whatever state that fish was caught, and we send you a box that we have from all of our program supporters. And so last year we saw that we had some reach with our post, and this year, we offered it up, and said, hey, we just want the data. That's all we care about, because we don't have any brand affiliation. We just want the data. And so but other brands are like, hey, we want to get our, our product and people that fish, and so we're like, well, we can do that. And so, we send the anglers a box full of tackle. It's like $100 worth of tackle.
That's awesome.
And that's the incentive for for them submitting a fish this year. So this year for the Dirty 30, we have, there's 29 total entries. And of the trophy trout citation, which again is a 27 to 30 inch trout, right now we have 72.
And this year alone, like a couple months, basically.
This year, yeah. Well, it starts 1 October 2018, so we run it fiscally.
Got it.
1 October to 30 September. And so we try to capture all 4 of the seasons. And one of the things that we were looking at too is like me as a wade fisherman, as a lure only guy, I was always under the assumption that really these big fish could only be caught in the winter months, right? And that is true. And we kind of validated that because last year, the 59 trout that we had, it was true and it's not true. It was true because the angling method of choice, which was lures, were predominantly in what I call the fall and winter months. So pretty much October through March. And then what you see is really a transition and a shift more towards live bait. And so, so I was always under the assumption that these big fish could be caught in artificials in the colder months. Well, that's true, probably because there's not a whole lot of live bait out there to throw in the winter months. And so now they're more susceptible to plastic. And we're kind of getting after, some of those semantics with the data that we're collecting, which I think is pretty cool. It can be pretty telling.
Oh, it's real
and
cool.
The last cool thing too is that, again, we're conservation minded, we're conservation based. And so we don't have any incentive for releasing the fish, but what we do try to capture is whether or not people are releasing fish. So this year, I was actually tallying up before I talked to you. And so of the 72 trophy trout citations that we have registered, only 5 of them have actually been kept or harvested. Of the 29 Dirty 30s, 2 were only kept. So we're showing, 7%, 11%, so that shows an angling mindset of people maybe just having a sheer respect for that size of fish and just release them. And we want to promote that, right? We want to get after it and share that passion and share that mindset and mentality. And so if we can grow that, man, it'd be huge.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great stat. So, and speaking of that, so I heard you say winter or full and new moon for sure. In the winter and the fall, there was the majority. Are people catching Dirty 30s all year long?
They are, okay. And it's actually even across the board.
Huh.
I was actually shocked by that last year. So it averaged between 13 and 16. And I'll call them quarters, right? So of those months. And so fall and winter had really the same total number of 30/30s harvested as spring, April through September. So spring and summer. What we found though was that, there were still some caught in the summer on plastics, but almost all the majority were caught on live or cut bait actually.
Got it.
So, which is cool. I mean, it's telling for me. That means they're still there. They're still eating in windows, and they're still, eating around the moons. Now they're just eating different things. Or maybe it's not necessarily that they would eat, live bait only, but the fact that it's maybe just more abundant, it's probably easier maybe for fishermen to go and target. And also too, you charter fleet, you got people out of school, people vacationing. And so now they have maybe more inexperienced anglers on their boat as opposed to the winter time where you got the diehards, man. It's cold and nasty, and I'm still out there. It's 41 degrees and it's blowing 20 out the northeast or northwest. I'm still wading a flat looking for a big bite. That's so. Anyway,
I love it.
Yeah.
So I got to know too, was there a specific lure where are they actually talking what soft plastic or hard bait they're using? What you guys find there?
Man, so everybody knows I didn't pay you to ask that question, but I love that question because I've looked at that. So we capture lure or kind of lure. And so Fat Boy, as you would imagine, so this year of the Dirty 30s, all but 2, so 27 of the 29 were caught in Texas. And I didn't do the math, but just look, glancing at the list, the majority are caught on Paul Brown Fat Boys. And so, the trophy trout citation list, though, is, I think, the one that's more telling with regards to that, because yes, there are, an abundance caught on Paul Brown Fat Boys. So there's 52 that were registered right now since 1 October in the state of Texas. There's 1 in Virginia, 7 in North Carolina, 1 in South Carolina, 6 in Florida, 1 in Alabama, 2 in Mississippi, and 2 in Louisiana. Here's the deal, though, is that in Texas, the Fat Boy kind of reigned supreme, and probably a close second was a topwater. But here's the cool thing, though, is that all the other ones were pretty much caught on soft plastics, except North Carolina, where they used those 7. Probably 5 of the 7 came on hard plastic twitch bait. So like a 17 MR or 27 MR or your Zuri 3DS Minnow or something like that. And so additionally, this is the really cool part, is that during those times, so we're talking early fall, so 1 October, around or about the Thanksgiving time frame in the state of Texas and across the other fisheries, you see, either it's because of the angling mindset, or you physically see on this list a transition to the fish going from eating smaller fin fish and or shrimp imitation lures to then larger fin fish. So your big super spooks or your Paul Brown Fat Boys. That's when you start seeing the list just littered with those baits. And so I did a Facebook Live about Corky season, true or false, and I measured the descent rate and the sink profile for all these different Paul Brown products. And as it turns out, the sink rate significantly reduces in the wintertime when the water temp's about 55 degrees at 30 parts per thousand. And so now, if you think, I know, fish in Texas, now you're fishing shallower, areas, but now you're throwing something that really kind of changes in how you fish it and the fishability of this lure just by the environmental factors, right? The water cools down and everything else. So now I'm able to fish this thing more effectively, target better, kind of where these fish are. And now I'm able to fish it more efficiently. And so I don't know, man, it's pretty unique, but these are the types of things that we're doing. Honestly, we're just trout nerds deluxe and we study all these things. And that's what, it's a labor of love, man. It's our passion,
That's so cool. So I know you guys aren't tracking this, I don't think, but in your opinion, just in terms of tides, is there a certain one you like when it sounds like most of the time you're waiting, right? You're wading the flat?
Yes. Okay. And so when I lived in Florida, I lived in the Banana River, or I lived in Rockledge actually. And so I fished a lot in the Banana River and the IRL between, oh man, don't make me forget it, but whatever that causeway is, and then 521, I can't remember. 4 and 521.
So you didn't really have tides to deal with.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so when I lived here before in Texas, if you understand the Texas fishery, there's not a lot of tide. And in Mississippi, the only thing I could relate really to tide was really based on moon phase. And I really liked either the new or the full, not necessarily what the tide was doing, but when it would actually flip. And so what I found is in Mississippi, that window that I would really find those big fish geared up on was really on those newer full moons when the tide was almost at its peak at 1 or 2 in the morning. And the reason I liked 1 or 2 in the morning is because I can go out there and there wasn't a darn soul out there. And so I could fish, really when nobody else was. And I'd fish pitch black conditions, and some of my buddies obviously know where where I used to fish and stuff like that. And they're still producing. But that was very specific with regards to tide. But the other estuaries, like your Florida and kind of that area, and in here, there's no tide. So then it really dictates on moon phase, which impacts selinar activity. So understanding not only your selinar, but your majors and minors, and when those kind of happen, as well as the environmental conditions, if you can kind of start to really get in sync with that, you just start to be more consistent.
I love it, man. You're like, this is like, you're a scientific angler, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And now that you're getting
It's
this
fun.
data, yeah, man, I'm just thinking you're going to have so much awesome data after a couple of years of this. This is so cool. I love this stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I mean, last thing, Joe, is like, we hope, we obviously want this program to continue. Right. And so not for us or not for Speckled Truth, but like, I'd be truly interested to see, right? Like if last year we had 59 Dirty 30 trout entered into our Dirty 30 program, let's say this year, okay, so we're at 29 this year, we're 6 months in, and chances are we probably hit about the same number and or if more or maybe slightly less, but around that same. But let's say we see a spike, or let's say we see a dip in over the course of, let's say, 5 years, then what happened, right? I mean, was there, just these crazy weather anomalies, or did we over harvest these, that class of fish? Because the 27s, 28s right now, and in a year or two, those are going to be your 30s, right? So the fact is that Texas has registered 52 in the 27-inch range right now, to 27 to 30. It looks to me like the future class of those 30s are there, and so maybe we can start kind of peeling the onion back, and maybe from a conservation perspective, look at how do we protect the resource, right? So how can we maybe not see those dips or those things, or I don't know, just having a better understanding. Right now, it's just kind of spitballing what we think is happening. We're just trying to put some data behind it.
I love it, and just getting more people involved, because there's like with Captain Peter Deeks, and
I do,
in that area, yeah. And I
don't know him personally. I mean, obviously, I'm a gawker like everybody else is, looking at either his Instagram photos and like, good God, man. But
he's one of our fishing coaches here at Salt Strong, and we went out to film basically kind of what you're doing. I mean, just like how to go out there and just catch big old gator trout. And of course, he's a live bait guy, so we're using live bait. And no lie, and I'm on the Gulf Coast of Florida, which we don't get trout this big. And I get this thing like the boat. I am kind of like your dad. I am so stoked. Like, this is like, for me, like, I am at the top of my world. And it was a little over 27 inches. So it would have been like a trophy trout citation. And no lie, Deeks is like, he's like, dude, no, we're not putting that on camera like that. We're trying to get 30 plus. I was like, what? I was like, are you crazy? And I think there's a lot of guys like that could have so much data, because it's not often you catch them over 30, but there's a lot in that 27 to 28, 29 inch range. And, I know if you had more data, it would probably help out everyone. So I'm gonna forward this episode over to him and make sure he connects with you. So
yeah. And so I mean, we'll send, if you send us, and so we have multiple people that have caught multiple citations this year, which is great, man. I mean, we have some really, really awesome anglers, man, that follow us just like you guys, and so, but they're just in tune with like we are, man. They're just nerds like we are, and so, but I will only send a sticker just to one time to you, and but having said that, man, if you want to continue to divest and divulge that information, again, the more we can grow that data set, the better. And that's what would be awesome, especially like in Florida, and even up the East Coast, because maybe we're seeing trends that's happening in North Carolina that is something that's going on in Texas or Mississippi, and if we can see the correlation between those two, maybe we can narrow it down to either an issue or a conservation program that we need to put in place, or this, that, and the other thing. Let's get after it, and we can only do that if we capture data. So,
you guys are doing a good job, man. So what's the future? I know you gotta go back to serve our country here. What's next? Like, where do you see Speckled Truth going, and like what are the big goals?
Yeah. So, honestly, Joe, I wish I could tell you that. The biggest goal I think that I could really tell you is, we did Biloxi Boat Show for the second time this year. And so we had live trout at our booth. This year we partnered with Gulf Coast Research Lab because they have a hatchery, and we want to teach people. We want to teach that next generation of anglers. So as families would come up with kids, we'd talk to them about the trout, and we're like, oh, you like those fish, and so, but as we're talking to the moms and the dads, we're like, that's the future of your fishery, right? This is the future of that fishery, because what they're doing is they're bringing them back to the hatchery and they're spawning these fish and they're capturing their genetics, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we want to do is continue to grow that message. And so next year we have a pretty ambitious goal for us, because we don't have a tremendous amount of revenue. We don't. I mean, we're just, the way we justify what we do is it's an investment in our fishery.
Yep.
And so we make enough to kind of do these shows, but next year we want to do not only the Biloxi Boat Show again, because that's our roots, man. That's where it kind of started. And then from there, I want to do the Louisiana Sportsman Show. And so the one in Gonzales. And then not only that, the main goal for us is to do the Houston Fishing Show, the Holder Fishing Show that's going on this week. Just because of the sheer volume of people. We have a lot of followers in Texas. And so we just want to continue to grow the message. I mean, just the faces of kids that walk up there. And that's where it kind of starts in terms of that fundamental shift, man. It's a generational shift of just taking what you need and releasing the rest,
Yep.
you know, and having an appreciation for that. And if we can continue to grow that and do that more in like a public setting, that's really what we love to do, man. I mean, I do seminars and stuff there. I do the kids fishing clinics and all the guys that help me. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the other folks helping, if you don't mind, Joe.
Oh yeah, of course.
But Kyle John Johnson is huge. He does all of our digital media. Ed Crum manages all of our Shopify and all of our apparel orders. And then Keith Morrison is actually in Florida. He does most of he's more of our kayak guy pro, but he's one of our OG followers, man. And so we're just stoked to have him on. But we all share the same passion, and we all just love talking to young and old, man, and just sharing the passion and sharing conservation and sharing that mindset. And so that's our biggest goal, at least for now. So.
I love it, man. Well, like I said earlier, I'm seriously proud of you and proud of what you guys are doing.
Thanks.
And I think you have something special there. And one, obviously, it's attracting people because the big fish. And then when they read, just like I did, I read about you and looked a little bit more into it. I was like, man, this is just a solid person. Like, one, you're serving our country, and you're out there just like you said earlier, man. You're literally giving back as much as you can to make sure that this is around for your 3 boys. And for, their kids, which would be your dad's, great grandchildren. And I think it's awesome, man. What, where can everyone go? Is it theSpeckledTruth.com? Is that right?
It is. It's
okay.
theSpeckledTruth.com. And then our 2 social media things is Instagram and Facebook. Yep.
And it's just look up Speckled Truth. Definitely give him a follow. And do you guys doing any YouTube stuff yet?
Not yet. We're growing that platform this year, as well as that was part of what we wanted to do in terms of raising money for our and the Biloxi Boat Show. I had a WordPress blog, and that's what we operate on right now. So, we just don't have the digital presence that we would like to have, right? And so that was part of it, is just kind of raise enough money to go ahead and fund our new website. So, yeah, we will have a new site. So we're kind of working on that, but we're also developing YouTube as well. And just trying to grow the platform.
Cool, man. Let us know how we can help in any way, and especially with the platform stuff. We've been there for 4 years of testing out everything and making a million mistakes. So,
could you hear the F-16 just fly over? That was actually pretty funny.
I did. Is that what that was?
That's an F-16. So.
That's so cool, man. Well, get
somebody telling me I need to get back to work.
Yeah, exactly. Get back to it. That's your call. And thank you. All you guys, please go check out Speckled Truth. Check them out at theSpeckledTruth.com, and then make sure to follow them on Instagram and all the other social platforms. Chris, man, such a pleasure, dude. Awesome stories. Anytime I get a little teared up, it's a good one. So that was good, brother.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was pain.